I used to have a bad habit of watching YouTube videos for about 5 to 6 hours every day, and sometimes even all day. You could say that I was addicted. If you're trying to start a good habit, say like a study routine or reading more in Japanese every day, or even losing weight, bad habits can put a quick end to the good ones. In order to figure out my bad habit and to cure it, I read several books looking for the answer, but in particular, it was 2 books that helped me to understand how habits work and give me the tools that I needed to fight them. The first of those books is The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, and in this book, Duhigg teaches us that every habit has 3 parts. It has a cue, a routine, and a reward. Cues can be anything from a certain time of the day, a feeling, an environment, or a pattern of behaviors, which causes the routine, which is the bad behavior that we want to change. And finally, the reward is the something that we get that motivates us to continue to do the habit again in the future. The model is simple, but figuring out the exact cue and the exact reward is difficult. To use my story as an example, in order to figure out the cue for my bad habit, I started paying very close attention to when exactly the bad behavior was happening. I did have a habit of writing things down in a notebook every single day, so I used that to keep a journal of when the binge watching would happen and also record what I was thinking and feeling at the time. I did this for several weeks, and soon I realized it was happening when I came home from work, when I came home from the gym, and when I came home from study sessions. Eventually, I was able to pinpoint the exact cue, which was eating. Every time I came home, I would feel hungry, so I would cook myself a meal. When I would sit down to eat that meal, I would be at my computer, and I would always want to watch YouTube while I ate. After that first video finished, I became powerless to resist more and more and more. According to Duhigg, in order to change a bad habit, we keep the old cue, change the routine, and find a reward that is similar. Now, this process can take a very long time to work, and even more so if we've developed a craving. Cravings occur when the cue automatically triggers the impending reward inside your own mind. And to fight these old habits and these old cravings, that's where we're going to need that second book I mentioned earlier, which is right here. And that book is The Willpower Instinct by Kelly McGonigal. And in this book, you'll find a list of strategies to help you build that willpower to resist old cravings and old habit loops. And the first strategy has already been discussed, which is awareness. Simply by catching ourselves starting the bad habit and then making some quick notes on pen and paper, we begin to learn when and why we lose self-control. There's a great quote from the book where she says that self-knowledge is the foundation of self-control. Know thyself is the beginning step. It builds willpower. So after you've become aware of when and why the bad habit happens, you can begin to reduce your impulse to automatically act on those cravings and urges by doing something called surfing the urge. When the craving arises to do the bad habit, resist the urge to act on it temporarily. Accept what you think and what you feel, and stay with those feelings for a few minutes before you decide to give in or not. If you're addicted to YouTube like I was, one of those thoughts will probably be just one video. Sometimes I had just one video in mind in particular that I wanted to watch, and I promised myself I would stop after that, but I almost never was able to keep that promise. I learned not to trust the voice in my head saying just one video. I wasn't always able to resist it, but I was able to take a step back and experiment with different routines. From that point, there was a third strategy from the book that helped me a lot, which was to understand my future self versus my current self. The author says that when we go to plan out how we're going to fight the bad habits in the future, we often imagine someone with more willpower and more energy and more time. And this person's not going to be stressed out or suffering from anxiety. And in fact, they're going to be ready to live up to our high expectations. This future self is going to do double the work because our current self said so, and we don't really feel like doing it now. Of course, this future self doesn't exist, and it never will. It doesn't matter how many motivational videos that you watch, because those feelings of being energized are going to fade the very next day or two. What she's trying to say is, we need to make plans for our current self, who is fighting those old habit loops and those old cravings with limited willpower. To use myself as an example, I once tried replacing entertaining videos on YouTube with ones that were educational instead. This was about 4 years ago when I was living in Korea and learning Korean, so I tried sitting and eating with Korean talk shows instead. But this habit never really stuck with me. It placed expectations that were too high. And when I was eating, I wanted to relax, but I wasn't able to do that with Korean talk shows. This brings us back to the power of habit. The author says that the reward you get from the new habit has to be similar to the one you got in the old habit. But in order to figure out a similar reward, I first had to figure out the original reward I was getting from binge watching YouTube videos. After some more journaling and self-observation, I learned it wasn't really the entertainment that I was craving, nor was it the friendly and charming personalities of YouTube. It was mindless relaxation. That was the reward. And it was then I realized that I didn't need YouTube to get those same exact feelings. I could get that just from the food itself. From that point, all I had to do to break the habit was to eat while standing up and while away from the computer. It sounds weird, but I found that I was able to focus on the act of eating itself, and the taste of the food was more than enough as a reward to solidify the new habit. Breaking habits is not easy, but it is possible. Once we understand how habits work, changing them can become like a game. Of course, we all feel bad after the bad behavior happens, but if we become curious to why we do the things we do and start to even study ourselves, that curiosity can make the process of changing habits fun rather than painful.